used the latest diving technology to explore the ship.
When Cousteau went down to the wreck, he immediately discovered massive damage on the port side, adjacent to the bow, right under the well deck.
The extent and location of the destruction baffles some experts. It was much greater than would be expected from a single mine or torpedo, causing speculation that there must have been a second internal explosion. Some have subsequently suggested that Britannic was smuggling illegal weapons for the British.
I'm prepared to discuss the possibility of an explosion if anybody can come forward with a credible explanation of what was exploding. I tend to think that what you're looking at is massive impact damage. The ship hit the bottom and the steel plates simply flayed apart.
And what of the accusations that Britannic was torpedoed because she was carrying illicit troops in defiance of the Geneva Convention?
As for troops, well, that bubble was burst when the ship sank. They weren't in the survivors, and they certainly all didn't go down with the ship, so it seems she was pretty innocent of that accusation also.
The depth of Britannic's watery grave prevented Cousteau's team from completing a thorough investigation of the wreck, and they left the site with more questions raised than answered.
Because of the limitations of diving technology at the time, Cousteau was only able to spend about 5 minutes on the bottom. And for an 882-foot-long ship, you can't see much. So he didn't have the time to fully explore the wreck and see if there was anything else that could be answered.
Hoping to pick up where Cousteau had left off, a team led by Dr. Robert Ballard, the discoverer of Titanic, returned to the site in 1995, armed with a dazzling array of new technologies.
Not only did he bring a nuclear-powered sub, he also brought 2 remotely controlled vehicles that could examine different portions of the wreck at the same time. I was fortunate to be able to have 2 dives in the NR-1, the nuclear-powered sub, to go see the Britannic with my own eyes. And it was very exciting, not only to see the ship, but to see her in such a pristine state.
In the crystal clear water, the team set out meticulously to record the condition of Britannic. The remote cameras record many never-before-seen details. Images reveal several open portholes along the side of the ship. Why were they left open? Could such small windows have helped bring about Britannic's rapid demise?
The portholes had been left open by the nursing staff to air out the rather stuffy wards. Had these portholes been closed, that could have been the difference between saving the ship and losing it.
Every open porthole contributes between a ton and 1.5 tons of water per second. For every 150 tons of added weight, the Britannic sinks an inch. Now, you realize that not only do you have the stupendous amount of damage underwater to contend with, but now you have all the supplemental flooding from those portholes left open.
Despite their success at documenting the wreck site, one piece of evidence eluded Ballard's team. They could not find the anchor to which a mine would have been tethered. It was the one piece of evidence which they believe could have provided the answer to the most lingering question surrounding Britannic. Was it a mine or a torpedo that sunk her?
Most of the research into the loss of the Britannic hinges more on historical documentation rather than a forensic analysis of the wreck. We know that a minefield was laid there just a few days earlier by a German mine-laying submarine, and when you go through the logs of all the submarines that would be candidates, none are in the area. So it's fairly conclusive just on the basis of documentation that it was a mine.
It's almost certain that it was a mine that sank the Britannic. The allegations for torpedo persist, but there's no real hard evidence. Therefore, a little look at the facts rather than the allegations and innuendo that surround the sinking of the ship seem to confirm that the Britannic was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
In recent years, improved equipment has allowed teams to enter and document the wreck. With each new exploration, a few more pieces of the Britannic puzzle fall into place.
One of the divers who's actually penetrated the wreck where the mine damage is, has seen a watertight door that's not completely closed. Well, that's a phenomenal find because that was something we'd only been able to speculate for the last few decades. And now, hopefully on the next expedition, they'll be able to get in, get photographs of it, and that will be proof that the watertight doors weren't able to close and that contributed to the loss of the ship.
Perhaps the sea will never give up all of her secrets, and the truth behind stories of the Britannic and her sisters, Olympic and Titanic, will forever elude us. Perhaps there is no mystery. Perhaps the three ships were just unfortunate victims in the history of man's relationship with the sea.
I'm afraid there's no hidden revelation about Britannic. She struck a mine and went to the bottom. Titanic is another case in point where they look for things that somehow pinpoint a hidden tragedy, a hidden dilemma, a hidden failing that nobody suspected before. She struck an iceberg and sank. That was it. Just as the Britannic did. She struck a mine and went to the bottom. And to think that the ships were jinxed, I think is not correct. I mean, I don't subscribe to that theory. My theory is that three ships happen to meet unkind ends.
It is a cold, haunting, and silent place. Doom and desolation have been here. That world is connected to this world by this fiber optic cable. And believe me, it is no exaggeration to say that that fiber optic cable, 2.5 miles worth, is quite literally the lifeline of this expedition.
Okay, what's that coming into view? What's that coming into view? That's something. Are you back down, Dave? What's your altitude? That was the ship. I pivot left.
Pardon?
No, we're just trying to make it out in the gloom here. Well, it's coming. You can see it on your sonar. And you can see the shadow behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's black behind it. And that is 20 meters away. Here's something. It's coming into view. It's coming into view. Okay.
After 4 long hours of waiting, I finally get to see the devastation of Titanic. We are here.
Walking up the ramp here, the sandwich part. Okay, you just got to the pivot left.
The first view of this broken giant is the back section of the bow.
You can see the plating there. That looks like a boiler. That is a boiler.
Ballard knows this ship inside and out. and he's been adding details for the past 20 years. I asked him about that moment in 1985 when he first laid eyes on her. What was the first object that you did discover? What was the first thing?
We started seeing wreckage, a nondescript wreckage. Stuff that didn't say Titanic, just said human, man-made.
But you knew it was the Titanic.
No, we didn't, because this was the convoy route to World War II. Countless ships were sunk in this area.
So when did you know that it was the
When we
Titanic?
saw the boiler.
Yeah.
Dad, hey, we're over something.
Oh, look at, yeah, you can see it on the other one.
And we got a huge shot of boiler. Oh, man. God damn!
We saw that boiler. It was Jean-Louis said, "The boiler."
The boiler.
The boiler. He was on watch, and that was the bingo. That was the dead ringer.
Tell me about the moment.
It was sort of like, you know, scoring the winning shot at the buzzer. So naturally, your reaction initially was, you know, really joyful.
Absolutely.
I mean, you jump with joy, and then someone in the control room looked at the clock and said, she sinks in 20 minutes.
Ballard's discovery was very close to the actual time of night when the Titanic sank.
And then you realize you were celebrating someone's death. And we stopped. We actually stopped the ship, pulled the vehicle up, and went out on the fantail and had a memorial service. And the mood never got joyous again.
News of that discovery swept around the world like a tidal wave. In an instant, a largely unknown explorer had given us back the Titanic. She was no longer a fading piece of history. She was real, heavy with iron chains and anchors, human with leather boots and a child's doll. And now the explorer has returned.
Roger that. You don't have to go forward more. Okay, there's the flying wing. Okay? We're just going to work. Well, we're in the promenade. If you go up, you'll see the entrance.
Oh, that's just incredible. It's like you're taking us hovering right over the moments in time when people still walk this ship.
Absolutely, and looked out those very windows.
You told me once that the portals were like eyes.
Looking back at you.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of them. There's that other davit. There's a davit to your right. See up there? That's the other lifeboat davit. When I look at the lifeboat davits, I think of the Strausses, this elderly couple who owned Macy's department store. And she crawled in the lifeboat, and her elderly husband went to follow. And the officer said, "I'm sorry, sir, women and children only." And Mrs. Strauss said, "Where he goes, I go." And she got out of the lifeboat and stood with him, and they both died. And so every time I look at that lifeboat davit, I think of that bravery of that old woman who stood with her husband and died. Did you tell him we don't want 16-foot seas? So we're the worst is going to head towards us.
And tomorrow?
Well, let's get some work done. You're still getting pulled? I don't understand. You backed away.
Can you thrust up, Dave? What does that mean? You lost image.
Yeah, we're dead.
You're dead. You're black. This is Hercules?
Hercules just had his eyes poked out. Hello there. So, we're dead.
All right, here's the situation and why it's trouble. It might be a lot of trouble. There's no communication with Hercules. She's powerless for some reason. Don't know why. But the speculation is this. As the weather has deteriorated, and it's gotten a lot worse even since we've been down, all of the weather on the surface is affecting what's happening down at the bottom of the ocean. As the main ship goes up, so too do the ROVs. But when a swell hits, then she rolls down like this, and so do the ROVs. The fiber optic cable slackens. On the next swell, up comes the fiber optic. Tight, maybe too tight, could have broken the optics. On top of that, if the Hercules is entirely powerless, and it looks like that's the case, when she comes to the stern and they try to bring her up, the recovery is going to be very tough. She has no power to maneuver. So for the first time, we're looking at the possibility that Argus, maybe Hercules, or both, could be swept under the stern into the propeller. This is precisely what Dr. Robert Ballard did not want. The scenes now streaming from the deep are breathtaking. Beauty and the Beast are both here, but there's no time to be mesmerized. The team's begun documenting the changes at the site since Dr. Ballard first visited 20 years ago. Some damage is natural, rust and decay. Others bear the handprint of man.
The brain of the ship was the radio room. It was there that they were receiving the iceberg warnings from all the ships in the area. And now, because of the constant landing of submarines, holes are being pounded in to the overhead, and you can actually now see down into it. Oh, that's all fallen down now. That whole thing is fallen down now.
So, this is where some of the last wires came out?
Yes. This was where he was sending a CQD, which was his first transmission, come quick distress, and then the SOS.
But the last cry for help didn't make it in time. In 1912, the Titanic was the largest moving man-made object ever built. 4 days after setting sail on her maiden voyage across the Atlantic, she struck an iceberg.
People understood that the way of traveling and the way we felt about our own infallibility, the fact that the ship was called unsinkable and then believed by many to be unsinkable, could sink suddenly a few days after she starts her maiden voyage, was quite a shock to the world.
The newspapers were reluctant to say that the ship had sunk until they got confirmation, because here we were building bigger skyscrapers and bigger ocean liners and faster automobiles, and this whole technology kind of taking over the world and conquering nature, the whole industrial revolution. And I think it was just unfathomable that something like that could happen, that there could be such a major catastrophe that would bring down the idea that you could really conquer nature. The Titanic really was a cross-section of society of the world, and at that time there was such a great division between the haves and the have-nots. So you had the people who were the fabulously wealthy and first class on down to third class, which had, from ordinary people on down to very, very poor people, and sort of representative of what 1912 was on Earth at that time.
The Titanic did what they said she could never do. She sank, carrying over 1,500 men, women, and children with her.
about deep-sea wrecks is they're so preserved. It's as if you are coming upon the battlefield the day after the battle.
It's like you're taking us hovering right over the moments in time when people still walk this ship.
It's as if you put it in cold storage and you just thawed it out to look at it.
If you took her out now, if you took this ship out of the sea, out of underwater, it'd destroy her.
It would destroy it.
Not just physically, but spiritually.
Both.
Here they were strolling along this deck,
Looking out of that window.
in perhaps one of the most beautiful moments of their life.
Only to become the worst moment of their life.
And now we watch and see here the visual relic frozen in time.
Yeah. Well, it's as if, when you look at it, that it's still trying to get to New York.
Yeah.
It's now crawling along the bottom of the ocean, but it looks like it's still trying to get there. Looks like there's a porcelain something in that hatch. Look in that hatch. It looked like a porcelain ramel frame. He left his shaving kit. That's a full bathtub, full of stuff. See the faucet handles. I want to pivot left and follow the other edge. Okay, I want to follow this edge forward. Another net, another landing site you can see. People have landed there. See how it smudges and it makes it all yellow. Oh, you can see they're smashing the town. Okay, it accelerates its collapse. It is a haunted house. Okay, so we're going to pivot on that. Follow the mast, follow the mast, follow the mast. Follow the mast. Okay, stop where you see that door. Take a look. So we're exploring now. This is new territory for me. I'm trying to find the crow's nest that used to be hanging there. And I'm assuming it either fell in that cargo hold or it's on that deck. Yeah, I think it fell in the cargo hold. It's gone. Up forward of the bridge in the mast was a crow's nest. And in that crow's nest were Fred Fleet and Reginald Lee, and they were looking out into the gloom, and then they saw the outline of the iceberg, and then they called on the ship's phone to Officer Moody and told him, "Iceberg, dead ahead." Pivot left, and that'll give you maneuvering space. When we were here, the mast laid across here, there was a beautiful brass light sitting on there. And then it ran down the crow's nest, and it's been destroyed.
Who took it? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, the French and the salvage people. Absolutely, it's in their exhibit.
for me how you feel about that.
I'd like to be looking at it right now, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you think the world would like to be seeing it sitting on the mast?
Is that piece of iron coming off the main mast where the bell was mounted?
You got it. I'm going to hold on that. That's the missing bell. The one that makes me the most angry is the destruction of the crow's nest. The pulling off of the mast light. Beautiful, beautiful brass light sitting on the mast is gone. The light that they had on that night, and beneath it the crow's nest where the lookouts were standing. To me, that's the moment when the Titanic met its death. When the lookout saw the iceberg looming out of the gloom in front of the bow of the Titanic, and that is now gone, and that is tragic. The bow looks the least changed. That's what's so wonderful. It's still the bow I saw 20 years ago. I have a hard time seeing much change there, except where the submarines have landed, and we can hopefully stop that. Hopefully when people see these images, they'll feel like I feel. How could you possibly want to see it any other way? How could you possibly not want to save it?
The stern. Here, the sheer brutality of the sinking is still visible. Remember, the stern and the bow sank separately. If you plot a course between them, you will run through the main debris field. It's nearly a half-mile long. The bow and stern, once part of the same ship, are now quite literally worlds apart. In the world of the stern, reminders of violence are all around. Twisted metal, steel shards. The ROVs have to be cautious here. The Titanic is still a dangerous place.
The stern was totally destroyed by the incredible crushing hand of the ocean. The ocean just took the stern of the Titanic going, and that's what you're looking at. It's destroyed it. All the watertight compartments were closed. And so this big bubble of air starts to the bottom of the ocean. Boom! Destroyed by the implosion, just like a nuclear submarine.
What's left is a kind of battlefield. This is very tricky maneuvering in here. You just don't know if a wrong turn with the vehicles is going to put you in a spot where anything can collapse.
We are on the farthest point of the deck, the rear, the stern edge.
This is the very end of the ship.
All right, this is where
Everyone ran out of ship.
they came to the edge.
They came to the edge. As the bow went down and the boats were all away, all the people left aboard could do was to move up, move aft, move aft, move aft. Hundreds and hundreds of people moving aft. The ship's starting to peel. People are starting to slide down the deck, and they're falling individually.
They're going up against this thing.
They're crawling. They're crawling up, grabbing. They finally come to this edge, and there's nothing left.
There's no choice to be made, is there, really?
Some go down, and others think, maybe if I jump, there's hope.
These people on that ship, when they headed out that night, This really was the unimaginable, and yet they're caught in a moment that was terrifyingly real.
Oh yeah, I mean, all of a sudden getting awakened, you know, rubbing your eyes, the knock on the door at around midnight, and they say, get in a lifeboat. I mean, we're you know, what? You know, people can't even comprehend it. Others said no. Some people locked themselves in a closet thinking they'll go hide. Can you imagine? Some people went and got in the closet, said, if I stay here, I'll be okay.
Even here, amidst the giant's wreckage, these small human stories still trump the devastation. Suddenly, a beautifully preserved relic drifts into view.
This spittoon sitting there strikes me as being exactly what you're talking about, looking at a personal item in real time and space.
Yeah, and the amazing thing, the stern fell and landed, and this came down on top of it.
Came floating down.
Floating down, along with that chamber pod over there. So this is the fallout. And imagine also the human fallout that came as well.
There were bodies drifting down with these items.
Same.
In life, the passengers on the Titanic were divided by class. But in death, many of them fell together. Their graveyard is a swath of ocean floor within a few hundred feet of the stern. And the ROVs are coming to it now. This is a landscape unlike any other, where the familiar is also the most haunting. A doorknob, a cooking pot, a teacup. Each one a still life.
In many ways, it's the debris field that's the heart of the shipwreck. The bow, the stern, they have all the big machinery on it, but it's here. It's here. Everything's on a human scale. This is where the Titanic speaks to me.
But much has changed since Ballard first saw this debris field nearly 20 years ago. It's estimated as many as 8,000 objects have been salvaged or taken from the ship. Even the memorial plaque Dr. Ballard originally left here to commemorate the site seems to be missing.
Keep coming. You're almost out. Yeah. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep spinning right. It may be out in that area. I just want to check this territory out.
Tilting up.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that the plaque?
Where?
Right in front of you. That's the plaque.
That's your plaque?
I bet you it is. I don't know. No, it's just a strap. Pivot right.
Someone took the original plaque that you placed there.
Yeah. Yep, they did.
Dr. Ballard imagines whoever moved or stole his plaque may be angry with his attempts to keep the ship away from the hands of salvagers.
It was more an act against me than an act against the people that died on the Titanic, because I opposed this recovery of artifact, a clash of cultures, a clash of philosophies, a clash of one's vision of the future.
But Ballard, as usual, has his own answers to those who would disturb the Titanic. He's made an exact copy of his plaque, and he will take it down and lay it at her side. Clearly, there is unfinished business here. The fate of the ship and the heart of this man are still entangled. Their reunion out here is not quite over. Welcome back aboard, everyone. We are now reporting live directly from the control van on the ship. These images behind us are streaming live from 2.5 miles beneath us on the ocean floor. This is the control van. It's been the epicenter for the last couple of weeks. A familiar face here, Dr. Ballard. And to his left is Captain McLean of NOAA. So, where are we exactly on the ship at this point? Where are the ROVs?
Well, as you said, we're 12,000 feet down. This is one of my favorite spots. We're right at the cutting edge of the ship on the bow. You can see the anchor. That's the port side anchor. And we're going to rise up now and acquire the rail. Now,
as you can see, the Titanic up in the bow is buried almost 60 feet in the bottom. So it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from the bottom of the ocean up to the rail. And here we are coming up on the rail of the ship.
Isn't that stunning?
And you can see the auxiliary anchor. It's just sitting up there in case it's needed. Now we're going to go along the rail and enter the ship.
How does she look to you, Bob, compared to 1985?
Oh, this is old Homewig. She looks, I can't see any major change since...
in terms of natural
yeah,
decay.
I mean, we'll see some man-made change in a minute. But now we're clearing the rail.
Right.
And we'll come right over. And those anchors, you can't believe how big those links are. I mean, you couldn't even lift one.
Right.
I mean, everything on
this ship is oversized.
Titanic in size. Yeah. Now we're going to turn down the axis. Now we're going to run down the very axis. There's the capstans, and off in the background are the windlasses. Those are used for dragging in these big, heavy anchors.
Hercules is maneuvering here so beautifully. How high above the deck is Hercules?
Just a couple feet.
Just a couple feet.
But we never touch. That's the beauty of the remotely operated vehicle technology. You can do this incredible moves along the deck and never touch the ship. We've been here almost 2 weeks. This is the forward cargo hole. It's sort of scary when you look down and there's a big gaping hole in it.
It's almost three-dimensional. It is. So all of the ship's cargo went through this spot here.
Exactly.
Now, when you hear in 1985, you laid a plaque, and that plaque has been removed by salvagers or
somebody
displaced.
It's
somehow.
Gone. Yeah.
Why, we don't know exactly.
No.
But you've decided to bring another.
Actually, I had it when I heard that the original plaque I made has been removed. I made another one, and we brought it back. And as we are working with NOAA, the rules of the road that we want to adopt from the future is never touch the ship.
Right.
Visit it. So instead of placing the plaque where it originally was, which was on the ship itself, we've come down here right at the base of the bow, just over the edge of where we are right now, and we're going to just set it on the ground right there.
So this is really an emblem of the kind of research you want to do. You can come to a site, explore it, but not interfere with it.
Exactly. And to me, that's where you should...
Look at that image.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
What is that yellow orange?
That's the rust sickles that have fallen down. We're just off the bow from where we are right this very second. Just over the edge is where we placed that plaque just a day or so
And we're
ago.
only a few feet from the bow at that point.
Oh yeah, the bow was just up in the upper right-hand corner.
We've seen so many images. I have to ask you some of your personal favorites, and the ones that strike you as being the most powerful.
Well, the bow is always impressive. The stern is sad, but to me, the most impressive images come from the debris field. I mean, you've been looking at this big ship, but look at this.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
so
moving.
these are from an area near the stern, right?
Exactly, and these are cases. In that case, the center one's champagne. You can see the cork. Now the other ones, wine bottles, the pressure will actually push the cork in. But in the champagne, they're shouldered, and they still. Oh, isn't that a powerful image?
There you go. Pair of
We
shoes.
all over the debris field are these personal statements, and these are women's shoes. You can see where she might have laced them up in the little high heels. Yeah, these are women's shoes, and you can just imagine her laying.
Sure.
You know, Mother Nature, when bodies land on the ocean floor in the deep sea, they remove the body,
Right.
and what's left is their tombstone, are their shoes.
You know, these images almost compel you to fill in the story. Where was she?
Who was she?
Who was she? What was she doing?
And did she survive?
Did she survive?
Yeah, or is this her final resting place?
Why are the shoes able to retain such integrity after all these
years? It's the treatment of the shoes. It's the tannic acid. The animals won't eat them. They'll eat the people. The bones will dissolve.
Right.
The deep sea will dissolve. Oh, and
what's
this was
that?
another case. We don't know exactly what was in that case of what those bottles are. And then you see tiles, and then yet again a shoe. Again, a woman's shoe. And if you look just coming into view, you'll see combs.
Oh, bone comb. Right.
Two of them.
Right.
And so whoever this woman was, she clearly had beautiful long hair, and you'll see nestled right next to her is a smaller shoe.
Oh.
Is that her daughter's shoe?
Yeah.
And then look down in the right-hand corner, you'll see a hand mirror. We're bouncing our lights off, and a comb it's resting on. So you can imagine the mother combing the daughter's hair. And again, your thoughts go to, well, did they make it off the ship, or is this their final resting place?
Do you ever wonder about the paradox that this tragedy produced your success as an explorer?
Well, I mean, it certainly got me interested in human history. And
Sure.
here's a trunk.
Look at
You know, you think about, you know, Lady Astor and how many trunks she brought aboard.
Sure.
Clearly, this was a wealthy person with precious stones there. And the lid is still closed, and you have to wonder what's under the lid.
What's inside?
But again, our policy is to look, but don't touch.
There's really almost no need for touching, is there?
No.
The image quality is so high.
Well, and your
it's so
imagination
intimate.
will fill the trunk.
Right, there you go.
I have my own. Oh, this is another very powerful shot. You can see this, probably a seaman.
Yeah.
That's probably an oil slicker.
An oil slicker.
Yeah, because that won't be eaten. And there's his foot.
So beneath that,
Don't know.
don't know.
Is the
his
remains
final
inside that?
resting
Yes. Don't know. But we're just going to leave it the way we see it.
Unbelievable.
Still there after so many years.
These images are really the kind of things that remind you that the Titanic is not just a story of the bow and the stern, but really ultimately we wouldn't be here if it weren't for those human souls.
Absolutely. But the Titanic, to me, is sort of the first pyramid of the deep that's ever been discovered. But there are countless shipwrecks that have a tremendous history to tell us.
Well,
as you go back in the time.
Three-dimensional
Yes, well,
quality
we're going to
you have
scoot along the rail. We're going to scoot right along the white rail. Todd, why don't you just take us right along the rail, and you'll see that Galatheid crab. And as you move along the rail, you get that three-dimensional effect. But I just love this.
Beautiful.
We've gone all around. We've spent such a wonderful time here.
Every time you see another detail, you want to have another one revealed, don't you?
Yeah. But we've had a wonderful expedition. We've been challenged by technical issues and weather issues, but it's been truly a wonderful return for me, and I'm satisfied.
Just look at this as we come back to the bow. You know, every time we've seen a picture, I think, well, it can't get any more powerful, and then it does.
Well, and we have so many hours that we were never able to show to people.
You can just
many.
look at that.
Yeah.
Now that looks like an ornament, but
it's a rust sickle coming
I mean,
off
on the
of
very
it. Oh
front
yeah,
of-
right. There's a shackle that's being covered now by. And there's the port anchor, and you'll come around. You'll see the auxiliary ankle, and then you'll come right around the corner. You'll see the starboard anchor.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Isn't that lovely? Nice job.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Every
And just think what else is out there.
Well, that's the other thing here, isn't it? That this exploration is just beginning.
Well, and working with NOAA and their Office of Ocean Exploration, we think that 72% of the world is beneath the sea, and most of it is unexplored. And with this kind of technology of telepresence, imagine what we can do, where we can go, and not only do exploration, but share it with people as it happens.
And it also really frames the debate as you look at this on whether to salvage these items that have been taken up, bring them into a museum individually, or is it better to look at them this way? Listen, we're running out of time, but I just want to thank you so much for taking us on this tour, and thank all of you for joining us here at the bottom of the ocean with the RMS Titanic. Thank you all very much. Good night. Spectacular. You know, as this drifts in here.
See the crinoid
ROVs,
right up there?
Yeah.
And the little, that coral, and
these
just
organisms.
there's
I
a
love
sea
the
anemone.
juxtaposition of an organism with the railing.
And they'll see an enemy sitting there, its new home, and another one sitting there sort of feeding away.
Yeah.
And it's...
For a two-dimensional shot, that it looks as real as it
well,
possibly
you
could
feel
be.
like you're looking out of a bay window.
Just beautiful.
Just lovely. And the lighting in the background.
Oh.
Yeah.
Color, I can't... Now, this kind of color you didn't have in 85.
Oh, I didn't have this kind of system in
No.
85 or 86. No,
Beautiful.
this is quite nice.